Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire.
Oh, you're trying to bring me down and run me out of town. You're taking what you want, but you can't take my rhythm now. I'm walking to my own beat, just gonna be me. I'm not replicating nobody.
Today I am here with Andy Howard. Now, if you don't know who Andy is, you're going to know him after this podcast, after this episode. And I believe you're going to love Andy and love his family and some things that are happening there here. Now, he's written a book we're going to talk about today as well. You know, if you're in student ministry, this is where a lot of this started for Andy and his wife, Tiffany. And the name of their book is, and tell me if I'm wrong here, Andy, When Words Don't Come Easy. Is that it?
That's correct, Doug. Thanks so much for having me. And yeah, this is going to be fun.
Absolutely. And when words don't come easy. So we're going to start things off a little bit different, Andy. This is a heavy topic, but we're not going to start off heavy. There's a couple of things that matter a whole lot. And one is your love story. And so here's what I want people to start with. You and Tiffany have been on this journey together with your girls. But before there were your girls, there was you and Tiffany. And before there was Tiffany, there was just you.
Amen.
You may have dated a bunch of people. I have no idea. But let's talk about you and Tiffany and how you guys intersected and got to know each other and your love story. Tell me about it.
Well, that's wild that you would bring that up. In fact, the book is called When Words Don't Come Easy. On my wedding day, I had wrote this song for Tiffany, and I sang it to her. And that was 20 years ago, coming up on the 23rd of May.
Wow.
So, but I wrote the song When Words Don't Come Easy and had no idea what was around the corner for us. It was almost prophetic looking back on it. And the song basically just talks about no matter what, through the good and the bad, I will be there with you when words don't come easy. And had no idea about my daughter. I know we're going to dive into that a little bit later. Had no idea about the things we would face. But to take it way back, since you said that, I was in a Christian rock band myself. I know you talked about your son being in a band.
Yeah.
We would play just many churches, youth camps, even Christian like coffee houses. And I remember 22 years ago, she came up to buy one of our posters that the band would sell, and they were just little 8x10 photos that I actually printed in my bedroom of all places because we were struggling musicians.
Right.
And she bought, they were only $1, but she had like 47 cents. And I was like, deal, you got it. But she didn't even know they weren't worth 47 cents. But I fooled her later with that. But that was the first time I ever met her. Fast forward a couple years later, though, in our youth group, I was a sponsor. At my brother was the actual youth pastor, and I was the sponsor. And we were going to this thing called Celebrate Freedom. It's in Dallas, Texas. On every 4th of July, it's one of the biggest outdoor Christian concerts that they probably 250,000 people come. And she was not even supposed to be there. She lived about 45 minutes away at the time, but she had come to stay the weekend with her friend, and God ordained it to where she came to that concert. And we spent 12 hours together with about 25 other kids out in 115 degree heat. And by the end of the day, I stunk like nobody's business, but she stuck around after that. If you can survive that day, I guess the rest is history.
And let me tell you what, I've spent some time in Texas, quite a bit of time. I'm from Florida, and there is something stinky hot about Texas when it's hot. So I can't imagine.
Midsummer, it gets quite warm here, and I guess you guys know a lot more about the humidity, and it gets pretty humid here in Texas too. So
to me, it's more like an oven than it was a sauna in Texas.
That is true. That's very accurate.
Well, keep going.
That was our official, I guess, first date. even though looking back, just because we spent so much time together, I felt like I knew everything about her by the end of the day. But a week later, I asked her out. Officially, we went and saw a band called Shaded Red. I don't know if you remember them, but they were a Christian band back in the goodness, that would have been late 90s. And there was a club, a Christian club called the Light Spot that the owner here in Kaufman, Texas, of all places, a little small place, but he brought in some of the biggest bands ever, Christian-wise, from Skillet to Switchfoot, to all these big-time bands coming through our little town. But I went and saw Shaded Red that night. The following Sunday, she came back to my church, and we kept talking, and it went from there, really. It was really love from first sight from the previous week before that. But over the next 2 years, we would then get married, or skipping forward, I asked her parents to, if I could ask her to marry me. And so we got married. Right away, things got really hard. And I guess I don't know how far you want me to go with that. But from that point forward, things got hard. But we knew we had each other and we had Jesus. We were both on fire for the Lord. I was called already to youth ministry, and she accepted that call as well when she accepted me, I guess, when she said yes. And so she became she just jumped right in student ministry with me. And man, I had so many, looking back, so many good memories, so many good things built around our kiddos. That's what we called them. We didn't have kids at the time, but we would, Friday nights were spent at the football fields watching either some of our students playing or in the band or cheering or at volleyball games or wherever. They were our life. And we felt so much how important relationships are, that we wanted just to be a part of as much as we could. So she jumped in with me, and we've been going nonstop ever since.
And for sure, nonstop. Now we're going to get into some of the things that are hard. Andy's depression, all of this stuff with his daughter who was born. She, in fact, I think she's going to be 15 soon. Is that right?
Just turned 15 last Thursday.
So Peyton's just turned 15. She's had 10% brain function, I think, since she was born.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of story there. We're going to go there. But you're without kids. How long were you guys married without kids and in student ministry?
Right at 5 years. Yes.
Okay. So you guys at least had a good running chance at a relationship and time built together, because there are, and those people are listening to this, whether you're volunteers, whether you're coaches, teachers, or volunteers in student ministry, or you're full-time in student ministry, just starting, been in 20, 30 years or whatever, which is what we're about long-term, there are divorces that happen just from the pressures of student ministry alone.
Wow. I believe that. Yeah.
And there are divorces that happen just from a child who's going through the type of physical problems that your daughter has gone through and still going through, just because of that. You put those two things together and you guys are still married and still love each other and have two more girls. That is an amazing story in itself, an amazing life.
Hey, God is good. He is faithful. And that's what I know you know that, but
I don't know it on your level. We've had some rough stuff in our life, of course. If you live, you're going to.
Yeah.
But Andy, come on. That's big.
It is. Both of those stats. There is even a stat about dads with special needs kids, and I don't have it in front of me, but I stumbled on it one time. And the divorce rate and just leaving out of the picture is just unreal. And I don't understand that part. I don't know, and I'm not judging. God's the judge and all that. I don't understand. Just from my perspective, is how you could leave your family behind. How could you do it? So it's hard. But going through it, there were many days where I just wasn't happy anymore, and there was no joy, and it was hard to always focus on the positive when you are seeing negative all around you. But you have to hold on to truth, because the enemy, the devil, would love to deceive you. He's a liar. that's his language. That's his native tongue, is lies. So he will get you to look what God's done to you. Look what all these things that are not true, they're lies, to get you distracted, to get you to take your eyes off of God and lose focus.
But you've got Mamba mentality.
Come on.
What you guys can't see is, if you could, and I
Yeah.
saw this in a couple of videos that are on YouTube, so you can go watch Andy on YouTube. He's prettier than me. That's why we're not videoing this. It just ticks me off. Ticks me off, Andy. So anyway,
You're being too nice.
he's also younger than me. So anyway, but he's got this poster of Kobe Bryant behind him. Mamba mentality
Yeah.
is a constant quest to try to be better. So tell me about that poster. I'm sure that's part of your mental state and what brought you out of depression stuff. Tell me about that poster and you.
I admire Kobe so much. And it's one of those weird things. I think I admire him more after his death, which, as an athlete, I always admired him just from his work ethic and all the things I heard about him. But I really started looking into him more. When someone tragically dies or is blasted on the news or something, and it comes across your timeline, you start looking into, let me find out more about them. I wish we would focus on people while they are living the way we do when we hear something tragic, because there's so many people. I say this all the time. Even at my book release that came out last September, it was such a special night, but it was a little embarrassing, right? When you have 200-300 people show up and they're all saying all these nice, kind things about you. And especially if you're an introvert like myself, I don't like the extra attention and stuff like that. But I told him that night, and I felt like this was from the Lord, but that what if we lived this night for everybody, like live life like this for everybody, where you didn't wait for this special occasion. Like, I wish everyone could feel the way I felt that night. And what happens with suicide, what happens with depression, so many people feel alone, and they don't have the support of people telling them all the kind things until after they're on the other side of the casket, when it's too late, when everybody will show up and say, wow, that dude was a good person, or that guy did this, or that guy did that. And I wish we could do more with our lives. And that's what I've always tried to do with my life, is take that extra minute to go out of your way to just share love with people. And so anyways, about Mamba, sorry, I do sidetrack very easily here.
That's why you were in student ministry, because
There you go.
you got to have you probably have the short attention span of a student.
For sure. So
you're like most of us.
With him, he was always constantly striving for more and striving for better. And he, in fact, one of his quotes he always talks about is you won't outwork him. And so with me as well, my health journey, I was 345 pounds at one time, and also going through depression. So for me, I don't have one of those stories about alcohol or drugs. Thank God I was saved at a fairly young age. I was about 5 years old, if I remember. I know it was at a kids' crusade when my mom and dad were pastors, and we were at a kids' crusade, and I gave my heart to the Lord at an early age. And so thank God I never strayed away or tried a lot of crazy things. But what I did do, my drug of choice was food. It was what I would use to numb the pain. I would go to food. That's what I turned to. And so I got up to 345 pounds at my heaviest. And so the wild thing here is I always say God has a sense of humor, because today my wife and I, we own a health coaching business. And so if you'd have told me, like, the 345 pound man is going to be helping people get their health in order, or the dude that suffered greatly from depression would be a catalyst for helping people find joy and find hope again. It is wild. The very things that almost killed me are literally the things that God is using for His glory and for His good. So God is faithful through all of it. And if you just keep looking to Him, that's my goal for anyone listening tonight, no matter where you're at.
Okay, we can shut it down now. That's enough. Thanks, Andy. We'll see you later. That's great stuff. No,
Yeah.
Listen, that is amazing. Everything you said right there is usable already. tell everybody how they can get in touch with you, how they can get the book. Tell us all the places they can reach you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, man. Yes, so the easiest is probably my website, andyhoward.com. We'll have everything about the book, about the podcast, about where I'm speaking. If I'm ever in an area near you, I would love to meet you. So you can go there, andyhoward.com. Amazon has the book. You can get it from Audible as well if you want me to. I'll even read it for you on Audible.
Oh, there you go. That's awfully nice of you.
And it's on Kindle as well for you Kindle folks out there. But it's just a blessing. But thank you so much. And then on social media, I have Facebook and Instagram. So Andy B. Howard, like boy. Apparently there's a lot of Andy Howards out there. So so keep the B in there.
Andy B. Howard. Gotcha.
Yes.
Gotcha. All right, good. That's great. And then as soon as I'll post your telephone number so everybody, I'm joking. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. But anyway, and listen, I love to have you laughing and stuff because you've gone through the darkness, okay? And these other guys, some of them are doing that. Yeah. And some people, they haven't gone through this darkness, so they need to know that you're laughing on this side of everything that you're. And let me tell you what, I love your smile and the things that you say about your family, stuff like that. And Tiffany must just think you're amazing. I know you think she's amazing.
Oh, I do, for sure. I outkick my coverage. Yes. For those who know sports references, she's definitely got the looks. I am here I'm her, I don't know. I was going to try to come up with something clever. I can't think of anything right now, Doug. I'll make her look better, Doug. That is good. And you know what? I do like to tell people this, and I'm glad you said that about my laugh. And I want people to know my story isn't it's not a sad story. Like so many times when someone's getting ready to introduce me, I want my story to be known as a story of redemption and a story of hope. And so it's sad. Some of the parts about it are sad, but God's faithfulness through all of it, man, it's a story of redeeming love and just faithfulness. And so I can't help but be happy when I share it.
Tell me about the book. Tell me your highlight chapters. How many chapters are in the book?
There are 12. I should know this. I think 12.
A true youth pastor who wrote a book. Here.
Yeah. Yes. 12 chapters.
Yes,
That's my final answer. My favorite chapter is 11, and it's I Am Right Now is the name of that one. And it's taken, the short version is it's taken from John 11 and Lazarus' story. And because so much of it, I feel like correlates to my life. And even going through the depression, there were times, so what happened, and I'm going to give you the shortest version of all this because this could take hours.
You want to hear it on Audible? You want to buy the book? We want them to go there. Good.
Yes. But Lazarus' story, so much of it I relate to when I started going through the depression. Cause at first I was as the dad, I told Tiffany, I felt really spiritual that I was going to beat down the doors of heaven every day until she was healed. And I was bivocational as a youth pastor. There was a season as a full-time youth pastor, but for the most part, I had to work outside of it. So I had to drive back and forth to Dallas, about an hour trip each way to my job. And so I would spend that time just praying for Peyton. And you know what? It started off as earnest, sincere prayers. It really was. And somewhere along the way, and I don't even remember exactly when, but there was a time where these earnest, sincere prayers turned into bitter, why me prayers. Like, God, if you owed anyone a favor here, I'm pretty much a volunteer at that point. They gave a love offering weekly for me as a youth pastor, but it was never about the money. I want that up front. And you don't get into ministry for the money, you get into it for the calling. But even going through all that, it was the whole time was like, I'm serving you, Lord. Couldn't you? I mean, you watch out for everybody else. This is how I felt at the time. It was just all on me, and so that's when the depression started. So one day, years later when I start writing the book. I never saw the two. I never compared myself to Mary or Martha, but hearing them in John 11 call out like, Lord, because they were close, right? They did life together, and they had even reached out to Jesus. Can you come? Your boy is sick. Basically, Lazarus is sick, and he's like, he tells his disciples, we're good, guys. In fact, I'm glad I'm not there. It's for God's glory that I'm not there. In fact, then he finds out, let's go back. He has passed away. That's short version. So then he shows up, and Mary and Martha, both within, 10 verses or so, say, where were you, Lord? If you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. And so that scripture alone jumped out at me for so much, because that's how I felt for so much of it. Where were you, God? Did you not care about me? Was I off your radar? Did you not see me? But yet, in John 11, John 11:25, and I read it out of the Message version when I read this particular, where it says, I am right now. And he was telling Mary, I am right now. And she was kind of like, I know you're kind of doing that preacher talk or preacher speak, right? I know one day I'll see him again, right? You promised me that, yes, we'll see him again in heaven. I know that. But he's like, no, I am right now. I am life. I have power. He's telling her what he's about to do. John 11:35 went so cool. He'd already told the disciples, let's go so God can be glorified. Let's go do this thing. He knows exactly why he's there. So John 11:35, the shortest verse in the Bible, 2 words. Why is it so significant? Jesus wept. Wow. He knew exactly. He knew. He could have just said, okay, guys, no more crying. Let's just take care of business. I'm here. He wept because he cares about everything that you and I face. He cares about our problems, our burdens. He sees them. He doesn't overlook them. He weeps with us. He cares for us. And what's so cool, he goes on to call out Lazarus, who was, I feel like I can say this to you, Doug, from your humor so far, is that we can say he was in a bad place. He was in a dark place. He was at a dead end. Sorry, I got you.
Dad jokes, Andy, faster jokes. We like to have a joke here almost every episode if we can.
But he had passed, and here comes Jesus. And so that's what if I could wrap up the whole book into one sentence here, it's about hope. And no matter where you're at, no matter how hard life is, life's been unfair. Just this week for where we're from, right up the road, like 30 minutes from my house, there was a shooting again, and at the mall, and 8 people, and 9 counting the shooter, lost their lives. And I cannot imagine. I mean, when I think I have it pretty hard, my babies all come home to me every day, and I cannot imagine something like that happening. So there is heartache all over the world every day. So I'm not naive enough to think that I'm the only one that's ever had a bad day. So my answer for you is there is always hope for you, and you just have to know where to look to find it, and that's through Jesus Christ.
Let's explore that for a second. Does that sound preacher enough? Let's explore that. But anyway,
Yes.
For anybody out there, if they've been in student ministry, any sort of any ministry, if they've been through life, let's even say not even ministry. Ministry is the extra weight on the cake, because and I told somebody about pastors, and I call volunteers pastors. If they are significantly engaged in the salvation and the spiritual growth of a group of people, whether it's students or adults or whatever, they are pastor. Whether they want to name themselves that or not, by heaven's accounts, they're pastor. They're shepherding these people, and there's a weight that comes with that is heavier than the people that are receiving are getting. You're getting their weight and your own weight. Your attack, the attack is heavy against you, to destroy that group of people that you're working with. And if you look throughout Scripture, we say these things, but there's nowhere in the Old Testament, there's nowhere in the New Testament to where people are not going through crap like you and I are going through, and what you've especially gone through.
Yeah.
In fact, Jesus was healing people with so much heartache from leprosy to death to losing their children to being crucified at that time, that was just the main punishment. Jesus just got one of the effects of what was already going on to their normal life. But there's a weight that you're carrying that's not only your children, and especially as a volunteer, I think there's a special blessing there. My youth pastors who just passed the last 6 years, his wife passed, and he passed, Ronnie and Maxine Kennedy, this year, and I have an episode about them. And they have no idea until they reached heaven just the impact of what happened with that 4 years with me and about 8 years in student ministry, to where they worked another job and poured themselves into us and suffered. Their life was pretty hard, but I think there's a huge blessing and a huge blessing on you. Then you went into couples ministry at your church as well. Is that right?
So we transitioned the last 3 years of our ministry there at the church. We were, I guess you'd call us couples pastors or marriage ministry pastors. It's a amazing tool called Reengage. It's really across the world. It's a program, but Reengage, you could go to, I believe it's reengage.org. It might be reengage.com. So either of the Reengages, but it's just a powerful, biblically based program where you come together and usually hear a testimony of a marriage couple that's been restored or just blessed. And then after that, you kind of break into small groups and work through this book, through the different chapters. But it was a very fun time for us. We love we love marriage. We love our marriage, and we want others to have help with marriage. So we spent the last almost 3-4 years doing that.
Plus going through the suffering you're going through. And it had to be, I'm going to guess that your people were so engaged with you guys because they knew what you were going through. Did you feel the effects of some of that?
At the time I didn't. I still don't.
It was just life for you. It was just life for you, right?
Yes, it really was. It was just, you don't know what you don't know. I guess we didn't know. People will always come out and say, "Well, I could never be as strong as you," and say that about having a daughter. And it's not like I signed up.
Nobody signs it. Nobody would sign up.
I didn't know until right. Yeah, you don't know until that day. And then it's at that point. So what do you do now? And I do. It's easier said than done, obviously now, but I do the same thing then that I've done my whole life and say, okay, God, you've given me this day. What can we do? I know you're not leaving me, so I'm not doing this alone. So let's live our best to make the most of this day. And if I get tomorrow, I want to do the exact same thing tomorrow. So we do that, and before you know it, you have a 15-year-old celebrating her birthday, and she wasn't even promised a year to us. So that's why this year at 15 was so special. But even the last month, and this, because we were supposed to do this interview probably 6 weeks ago, I think, a month ago.
Yeah. Tell everybody about what happened.
And so she can't talk. And her full diagnosis, she was given 10% brain function. So she can't communicate. That's one of the things they said she would never be able to do. But so when something goes wrong, we have to pretty much go through the checklist. And we do know she'll cry, she'll whine, so we know when she's uncomfortable. And then on this particular instance, her blood pressure was up, her heart rate was up, and that's okay every once in a while. But when it stays peaked, then we do have 24-hour nursing that they've become like family to us and take care of Peyton. And one of the nurses came in and said, "I really think we need to go to the ER." And so we went to the ER, and of course they do the same thing. They start doing checklists because she can't tell us what's hurting. And they did a CT and ran labs and found out her white blood count was high, which meant there was infection. So they do the CT. So many God moments even throughout this. So the CT was supposed to be focused just on her appendix because she had appendicitis, but they zoomed out a little bit and actually saw there was fluid around her heart. So initially they would have just took her straight to surgery to take the appendix out. And they said she may not have survived. Her heart may not have been able to take that surgery with the fluid around her heart. So even God pulling back the camera far enough on the CT where they could see the fluid. So with that said, they had to go to plan B, which was try to treat it by antibiotics, the appendix. Well, she went for about a week. Everything was getting better. We were supposed to go home on that Thursday. And sure enough, it burst on the last day, which is another God thing. We could have got home when it burst. So we were still in the hospital. Instead of going home, she goes to ICU, and she spent the next 3 weeks in ICU. We got home. Everything was beautiful for 3 days. And because they gave her so much antibiotics for the infection, she had something called C. diff. Have you ever heard of this? I had never heard of this before this, but C. diff is it really basically it's an infection. I think it's an infection. Maybe it's just irritability to her bowels because it's caused by too much antibiotics. And so basically she was running a high fever and had severe diarrhea. And so she was even, what's it called?
Dehydration, basically. She's dehydrated, yeah.
She was
This
dehydrated.
is one of the most
yeah.
common effects of too many bad things that happen in all of our lives. You know that.
Yeah.
You're a health trainer now. You understand dehydration more than anybody
Yeah, for
else.
sure. So we got back and had to spend an additional week in the hospital. But you know what? She did get home on her birthday on the 27th of April. She got to come home. She's doing so much better now. But yeah, so even throughout all this, we weren't promised a year, and then there was times when we wondered, will she reach 15 this last month? But you know what, God, He's been faithful through it all. He really has. And so, one of the taglines that I use on the book, it's even on the cover, is "There's beauty in the broken," and for me, that just simply reminds me to always find the beauty in the negative. Don't dwell in the negative times. Don't dwell in you mentioned it already. There's enough bad times going around. There's enough the news or wherever you can feed your head with so much negative, but there's also positive. There's also beautiful things happening in this world as well. So try to focus on the beauty. And I don't know. That's how I've done it every day. Is try to, God, what do you have for me today? What can we do today together?
You know, and for guys like myself who have not been through that, and I've been through similar things with friends of mine and their children as severe as what you're going through right now. But I haven't. Even though I've gone through it with them, I still haven't. And so that is different. They understand you, you understand them. Here you are, you're on this journey with Peyton. You've written your book. You're selling the book now. By the way, 200 people showing up for a book signing of an unknown author. That's really cool stuff. That's a big deal. I've got a little book. I don't even think people, I think people said, please don't go to that book signing. But anyway, I didn't even do one.
No.
But anyway, but it's a good book. It's a good book anyway. But nothing like what we're talking about with what you've got. There's a whole nother area about student ministry. Tell me about your health and wellness, though. Here you are on a journey of health and wellness. Here you are, you grew up in a pastor's home. You did Christian music and bands, and you ministered to a lot of people probably while you were a teenager. If you're like me and my son, you know, we had the garage bands and learned there, and then we took it to the streets, you know, and whatever. We did all that stuff. And then here we go. You go through some depression. I'm guessing a lot of the weight came on with the depression. Is that a lot of it?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Because you didn't have alcohol. You didn't have some of the other effects of drugs other people would have gone to. And people in ministry go to those things too. But yours is food. Every man has some area in their life. Every woman, every man, we're born with a sin nature that we inherited. We get it. We all have something. And so when we are pressurized at our hardest moments, those somethings come out.
Yeah.
So here it was with you. I'm sure you didn't get to 345 pounds overnight. How many years did it take you to get there?
I was probably around 26 years old when I got to my heaviest. And you know what? I grew up, I love sports. I was in an athletic family. You know, I already told you I had 4 older brothers, so some of it was just survival of the fittest, just trying to see if I could make it to mom before I got beat up, you know, by my brothers.
Exactly.
Since they're not on here, I'm going to say that. I never poked the bear. I was never the instigator by any means. But anyways, grew up playing sports, grew up playing basketball, especially. So, I was a 2 sandwich kid. When others would only do one, I would do two, but nothing ever stuck to me. I'm 6'3", but I was 170 pounds, soaking wet. Grew up just skinny. And, but you know what? You quit playing sports, you graduate high school, and I guess your habits change. You don't realize that you're still eating the same, and you cannot maintain that metabolism that you once had. One, you're just getting older. Two, also. So yeah, slowly but surely, and it's funny, you don't even realize it either. It's such a slippery slope. Like maybe some people do. I didn't. I didn't realize that I was gaining weight. And anyways, there was a picture after my dad passed away that all 5 of us, we got to play worship for a men's conference. We played together as the worship band, all my brothers and I. And I remember wanting to look my best that night, wanting to honor Dad. And I had my best shirt on that, I don't know, felt the skinniest, you know what I mean? And that picture that night was supposed to be such a proud moment. I saw with me and my 4 brothers, and it's not quite this, but this is what I saw. This is a little bit of exaggeration, but I felt like it was me and it was the 4, like it was half and half. Like I felt as big as my 4 brothers because it just jumped out at me. And that's how the devil is as well. He will speak lies to you, speak lies over you. But that was the beginning of my turning point as well. I didn't get completely over it because this was still before Peyton, before Peyton's diagnosis. But I did what's called a gastric sleeve procedure. This was 12 years ago. Lost the weight overnight. I'm not really, but it was pretty much like 90 days. I mean, it just fell off me. But again, I tell people all the time now I needed mind surgery or brain surgery, not stomach surgery. And so I didn't change my relationship with food. I kept going back. And at the same job that I was at when I talked about Peyton earlier, we were doing an end of year review with the insurance people. And I remember this one year, they said, Mr. Howard, you weigh 258 pounds. You gained 40 pounds this year. And as at that moment, I'm like, oh my goodness, another 40 pounds. I'll be back in the 300-pound club that I swore I would never go to if I did this next year. So that's when we started looking for help and found a program called Optavia, which we've now bought into as health and wellness coaches in that. So, but it helped us, and we haven't looked back. A few things changed mentally. As one, I started working on my health. I started focusing on what health does to me. And then the other thing was I started for the first time in my life at 40 years old, started working out. I used to never work out. I used to think working out was a punishment that my coaches would make us do. Like we messed something up on the baseline, let's run. I didn't think of it as a good thing, but even mentally, the endorphins your body releases, how cool God is, right? That He created this amazing body that works together, that even so many of us we sit and we're isolated and we're away. So that's no wonder depression is running rampant. We separate ourselves from community, and then we sit and we're stagnant. We don't exercise or work out or any of the things, and so many people do suffer. But now I've found that working out is so fun for me. I enjoy it. I used to dread it, but now I enjoy it. So that's my health journey.
And so you and Tiffany are coaching people in that area as well.
Yes.
And so once again, they can reach out to you at andybhoward.com,
yes, sir.
Right?
Andy B. Howard on Instagram or Facebook. Now on the website, it's just andyhoward.com. Yeah.
Tell us what else you want to tell us. What are some things that people don't know about you and Tiffany that you wish they knew?
I just love helping people. And I don't know that they don't know that. Maybe if you followed me long enough, you know that. That's my heart. We have been blessed financially. So we don't need, I don't want to say you don't ever need to sell a book or you don't ever need to get an offering, but I have told God that I will never say no to anywhere, any invitation that I'm open, whether it's a youth group of 10 people, because man, these kids, I can't imagine growing up. I thought it was hard, and I graduated in 97, which isn't that long ago, but I mean, gosh, it is, I guess. Time flies. But I can't imagine going back to school today and the fears and the anxiety and all the things. Just not even school. I mean, school is bad enough, but then how hard it is for these kiddos. So I speak at youth groups. I speak at youth camps. We travel to churches, even business opportunities for conferences that, and depending on where it's at, I will always, even if I don't get to work faith from the stage, they buy my book and they get to hear about Jesus. So it's really cool how that works. But I am just excited that the story of anxiety and depression travels well. And so even this, I always say it's not what is happening to me, but it's what's happening for me and how God used it. Yeah, it's and I'll close. I don't know when we're closing, but at least one more story you have to hear about Peyton.
No, we're not. We're closed when we're done. So
Awesome. Well, you got to at least share this story, and we'll go from there. But I have a good friend who's a pastor as well. They're from Virginia, and so Jackie, that's the Lee's wife, Jackie. She, after a Sunday morning worship, she calls and says, Andy, Tiffany, I got to tell you guys what happened today during worship. And I was trying to write it down just as fast as possible because I didn't want to miss anything. And she had never been to our home at that time. And she had definitely never been inside Peyton's room. We're very protective. She's just got such a low immune system that she gets so sick when people, meaning well, come see her.
Yes.
So, but she had this vision of her room, and she's like, "Do y'all have a hospital bed for her?" And I was like, "Well, yes, it is." And she said, "Cause I saw her laying back in this hospital bed in her body, but I saw her spirit man kind of sitting up." And she said, for lack of better words, crisscross applesauce. And as the kind of vision came around her back, I noticed that Jesus was sitting at the foot of her bed, and they were playing some kind of game. I didn't focus on the game. It didn't matter. It might have been chess or checkers, but I could just see by the smile on her face that they were quite close, that they were good pals.
Wow.
And that was so powerful for me. And I talk about it even in the book, because so many times I had her life planned out for her, man. I did, from all the father-daughter dances or the tea parties, all the things that we would do together from the day I found out I was having a girl to then all of a sudden having what I felt like was my life ripped out from, having the rug pulled out from under me. And so hearing that, this whole time I've been worried about all the things that Peyton's missing out on. And she's like, Dad, if you only knew what you're missing out. She feels sorry for me because she spends her days with Jesus in such a, what I feel like, such an even better level than what any of us could experience ourselves. So I don't know. It was just so special hearing that. And that helped me so much, because it is hard as a dad when you're feeling like, when you have two twins especially, and again, Peyton can't get out for everything, so she don't always get to go to the soccer games, or she don't get to go even to family dinner at a restaurant or whatnot. So it is hard leaving her behind.
Right.
But at the same time, we have this peace knowing that her good pal Jesus is right there with her. And so she feels bad for us looking back. She feels bad at what we don't get to have. So I do have hope in that, knowing that even though it is a horrible tragedy that I wouldn't wish on anybody, but I take courage knowing that what I feel like is, there was this game show way back in the day called The Biggest Loser, and they used to get this thing called an immunity pass, right? And when they got that, they would never get kicked off or voted off for that week, no matter if they gained 10 pounds or whatever. And I feel like in life, Jesus came by and he delivered her own immunity pass, because she will never know the age of accountability. She'll never lose her innocence. She's just special. She doesn't do a whole lot, honestly. She smiles for us. We can tell with eye contact that she knows when we're in the room, but she's legally blind. She has no muscle tone. She can't use her hands or fingers, anything like that. But she is so special to us. And when we see her just smile, something as simple as a smile, it's so encouraging that I feel like I can do anything old Brian Adams. Right? When I see you smile, right? I think that was him. Anyways, it's the same. Whether I'm doing a workout that I feel bad, like I don't know if I can lift this today. Well, I think about my daughter. Or I don't know if I can run a mile today. I think about my daughter. So she encourages me. She inspires me. And then even thinking about my spiritual walk, how she has such a great relationship with Jesus, that encourages me. And I know maybe it's not here. I may not get to see her take her first steps here on earth, but I know one day I will see her totally whole and get to hear her speak for the first time and get to feel that long-awaited hug of her actually putting her arms around me and not just me putting them around her. So I know that's coming, and that's where my hope lies, that I will see that one day. And so we gosh, I wish I could say that every single day is rosy and perfect, but you already mentioned it. None of us are promised that. We were, in fact, we're promised the complete opposite. He promised us there would be trouble, there would be hard days.
Yes.
But he also promised us that he would never leave us nor forsake us. So that's where my hope is.
Yeah, listen, I think you gave us the story we needed. And that story about your daughter and Jesus sitting there, I believe that is true. On this podcast, there's one guy, by the way, Sean, who was on The Biggest Loser. He's
Wow.
in Charlotte, North Carolina, he was youth pastor for a while, and then traveled with Toby Mac for a while as a road manager and music director. But he was on that show. But the other was Daryl. If you go through and listen to Daryl and his, I believe it was 21 Days in Heaven. He was in a coma, and he was a fullback for University of Florida. Was a Christian then, Fellowship of Christian Athletes leader, and his buddy introduced me to him. But he talks about heaven, and he talks about who he sees there, and he even talked about colors, and that the colors emitted love.
Wow.
That they were more brilliant than ever. And I've heard of other stories since him about people like your daughter who, in their present state, are in the presence of Jesus personally. They see him, they're with him, and he's with them because he was called what? Man of sorrows.
Yeah.
He understood our sorrows. He understood our suffering. It doesn't even make sense that God loves us that much.
Yeah.
I was reading today, Tim Tebow and his John 3:16. Coach didn't want him to put it on because he'd always used Philippians, another verse there, and he kept being impressed, and he talked about the things that God did through him, just wearing that for one game, and the effects 3 years later of those things. So what is happening to Peyton and what is happening in your life are no surprises to Jesus and to God the Father. They are sitting there going, listen, Andy, Tiffany, the rewards are so beyond. Peyton's already getting rewards from me because she knows she's my special girl.
Wow.
I love her. I'm with her every day. I'm with her all day, all night. I never sleep. I never slumber. I'm always there.
Yeah.
The angels are ministering to her. She's my weak one on earth, but she is my heartbeat.
Amen.
So I say that to you.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing those things to lift up so many people, both who are going to go through and haven't gone through. And once again, thanks for the Mamba Mentality poster behind you. The other people will have to go on other videos because I just wasn't smart enough to do this stuff. And you can see your Mamba Mentality. Andy, any last words before we close this out?
No, thank you, Doug, for having me. And it's always an honor. I will say this in closing. This is what's wild, because you prayed this before we started the conversation, before we started recording. And you prayed that our story would reach millions. Well, one thing that I prayed every single day when I was talking about that hour commute is, God, you're going to use Peyton's story to reach millions. In my own mind, because I'm limited, I'm a human. I thought, oh God, you're going to use her story. You're going to raise her up out of her wheelchair or rise her up from her bed. She's going to come running down the hall one day and give me a big hug and all the things and say, let's go Facebook Live. Let's tell the world about this story. But, it hasn't happened that way yet. It very well could. But I do know this, that tonight I'm getting to talk with my friend Doug, who I probably would have never met. Had had we not gone through this story. And I got to do a podcast yesterday in Canada, of all places. And I did a podcast last week in California. I went to the Rise Up conference in Atlanta 2 weeks ago. I got to go to Arizona 3 weeks ago. So God is just opening up door after door with a story. And so if you would, I would just ask you to remember me in prayers, Tiffany in your prayers, baby Peyton, of course. But he is using her story. It's not the way that I thought it was supposed to go, but he's doing it.
Yeah, he always has a better plan.
Yes.
I mean, I just don't get why he doesn't use my plan the way
Like,
I've
why?
already set it up. I know. He's funny that way. God's funny that way. But yeah, absolutely. And my prayer is that for you, that you will reach millions, just as you've spoken with your own mouth. I was listening to one of the great artists last night. Disney has a special on him. I can't even believe I can't think of his name right now. But he's a redheaded, geeky kid from the UK. Everybody knows him except for my brain right now, which is obviously not connecting. Anyway, he was just a redheaded, geeky kid with big old thick glasses growing up. But he said, I believe that, if I believed hard enough that these things would happen. Now he's one of the world's greatest songwriters, singers, and
Was it Ed Sheeran?
Yeah, that's it. Ed. It's Ed. Didn't
Awesome.
even know the guy was married till I started watching the special
Wow.
as Ed Sheeran, and he's going, nobody wanted to see me. I'm just a redheaded, geeky guy, and he is.
Yeah.
And he was even geekier. They showed his young kid pictures. But he said, but I believed that I was going to reach the world with my music.
Wow.
And then he fell in love with his high school sweetheart, and they talk about their story on there. It's quite an amazing story, but it goes along to me with your story that God's plans for us are much bigger than our own plans. You spoke those things into existence. We think it's our words and our prayers, but it's God putting those words in our mouth to say, God, reach millions through our story. If you can't reach millions through our smiles, then reach millions through our pain. Whatever reaches the world with the gospel and takes people to heaven so that they can see the same Jesus that Peyton is seeing
Amen.
every day at her bedside, then God, thank you for using our story.
Yes.
And so there's our prayer.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen.
Reach millions. All right, brother, I'm out tonight. You go love your family, and I'll love mine, and you guys, we'll get together again. We'll talk again, and we'll see what happens with this episode.
Sounds great, Doug. Thanks so much, buddy.
All right, man. Talk to you later. Thanks, Andy.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.